I believe we are ready to begin. First of all, thank you to everyone for spending some of your time with us today to talk about transportation in the Columbus area. In looking at the participant list, I know most of you, so thank you once again for joining us. For those I don't know, I am Jeff Bergman. I'm the director of the City of Columbus in Bartholomew County Planning Department. One of our roles is to serve as staff for CAMPO, the Columbus Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. And this is an entity that's charged with long-term transportation planning in our community and managing the federal funds that we receive each year for improvement projects. So today we'll be discussing CAMPO's long-range transportation plan. And before we really get into that, I would like to introduce two other planning department staff members who are present today, and you should be able to see on the image there on the screen. So Emily Pinkston is with us. Emily's one of our senior planners. One of her roles is to serve as our City of Columbus bicycle and pedestrian coordinator. So she brings that expertise to our discussion today. And then we also have Laura Thayer, who is our CAMPO director and our transportation planner. And I'll turn things over to Laura. She is going to share some additional information about CAMPO, and then we'll have our consultant team lead us through today's event. So once again, thanks for joining us. Go ahead, Laura. I hope. I see Laura in the list.
Laura, you may have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Laura is muted.
Well, why don't we we'll see if Laura can figure out what may be a technical issue there. And I'll go ahead and do my best Laura impression here and share what she was going to. And I think that builds off of my brief introduction on CAMPO and the role of MPOs or metropolitan planning organizations in general. And MPOs are created really in the most practical sense as the vehicle to organize, deliver, and manage that federal funding for transportation improvement projects. But in order to make sure that's done thoughtfully, the community needs to develop a vision, create policies and strategies for those improvements, and really operate off of a series of both long-term and short-term plans. And I see that Laura is unmuted. Laura, do you want to pick up there?
Yes, I'm sorry that I had my mute on. I did not realize it. But okay, so I see who's attending, and many of these people I know and are already familiar with CAMPO. As Jeff said, this is the organization that carries out transportation in the Columbus area, and it's part of the planning department. So I should say that CAMPO actually is a board, and which we call the policy board here, which is the decision-making body. And the board's primary purpose is to oversee the planning process and to program funding for projects that are ultimately selected through that process. Once the process is complete, each project is managed by the appropriate jurisdiction. In our case, that's either the City of Columbus or Bartholomew County, and the management comes from their engineer's office. In developing the long-range plan, CAMPO focuses on creating a vision for our transportation future network and on creating policies and strategies to support that vision. The long-range plan is the basis for short-range planning and programming that takes place later on a 2-year cycle. The importance of public input cannot be emphasized enough in developing the long-range plan, as that is the basis for everything else that comes afterwards. We are so happy to have you here today because we need your input to help help determine the improvements that will be made over the next several years. And I want to thank you very much for participating, and also to thank our steering committee. And I see several steering committee members are participating. And I also would like to introduce our consultants. We have Sharif Ullah, Katie Shackelford, and Chris Beard of the Lockmuller Group. And I will let them take it over now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura, and thanks, Jeff, for the nice introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sharifullah. I'm with Lockmuller Group. I am the project manager for the Long Range Transportation Plan Update for CAMPO. And for over the last 15 years or so, I've been working in transportation planning and travel modeling in both private and government sectors throughout the Midwest. With me, I have Katie Shackelford, who is working as the public engagement lead. She is also a senior transportation planner with us. And I also have Chris Beard, who is doing the QC/QA part of the project. So Katie, could you please introduce yourself?
Certainly. Thanks, Sharif. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. As Sharif mentioned, my name is Katie Shackelford. I am a senior planner with Lockmuller Group. I have about 8 years of professional experience in the planning world. My first 5 years were at the public sector level. Ever since then, I've been working with Lockmuller out of our St. Louis office as we serve our residents in Indiana, Illinois, and Missouri on their transportation needs, long range, short range, and all things in between.
Thank you, Katie.
I'll pass it on to Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Beard. I lead the transportation planning practice here at Lockmuller Group, and I've been working in the Columbus region going back to the inception of the MPO, and worked on the previous long-range plan as well as building your first travel model. So very excited to be here with you all this afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So let me start with the agenda for today's community workshop. So we will touch base on the project background and also the timeline. And we will go through what are our core purposes for this community meeting. And we will have a discussion about 2016 LRTP SWOT and also the goals and objectives, performance matrices established in 2016 LRTP and where we are based on those. And we have proposed a few updates for the goals and objectives for the LRTP, and we are going to inform you about that. And then we are going to discuss the LRTP scenarios, the priority projects, and at the end there will be several poll questions to get input from the participants, and we are also going to discuss about the next steps in the project. Next slide, please. So before we go to the core part of the presentation, some housekeeping issues. We are requesting to mute your microphone at this time. And then this meeting is being recorded, and the recorded version will be available for you if needed. And also we appreciate and welcome your questions and comments. So please submit your questions in the chat box, and we assure you that one of us will taking a note of it, and then we will address your questions during this presentation. And if you have difficulty hearing or seeing the content, please let us know as soon as possible, and we will try to address that as well. Next slide. So let's talk about the project timeline. The project started in May of this year. And as you can see that there will be several opportunities for public involvement throughout this project. We already have finished some of the tasks, including reviewing our previous plans, demographic assessment, land use, and environment. At this time, we are working on updating goals and objectives and also updating the travel demand model. And we hope to complete all these tasks by the summer of 2021. Next slide. So to go through the purpose of the community meeting and 2016 SWOT analysis, I'm requesting Katie to take over. Katie.
Thanks, Sharif. So one of the reasons we have you here today is to take part in our community meetings. Today's goals are to discuss the long-range transportation plan and the update process that's underway, to share the current goals and objectives that have been refined, to assess your community transportation needs, and then to gather any new information that you think might be relevant to this project. So first, before we get started, I just want to remind everybody why engagement matters. So engagement isn't just checking a box and making sure we have the meeting as required by federal law. It really helps to make sure this project is a success. So a couple things I want to hit on. Engagement increases the likelihood that project solutions will be widely accepted. Citizens who participate in these processes show significant commitment to help make the projects happen. They create more effective solutions. Drawing on local knowledge from a diverse group creates solutions that are practical and effective. Engagement improves citizens' knowledge and skills for problem solving. Participants who are here today and who will see this recording later learn more about the issues in depth, and they have a greater knowledge to allow them to see all the sides of the problem. Citizens can practice communication and decision-making live with their elected officials. This is also a tool to empower and integrate people from different backgrounds. Groups that often feel ignored can gain greater control over their lives and their community by engaging in this process. When people from different areas of the community work together, they often find that they have a lot in common. This also creates a local network of community members who can work together to solve a problem. The more people who know what's going on and who are willing to work towards the goal, the more likely the community is successful in reaching that goal. Engagement also creates several opportunities for discussing and exploring the problems and concerns of the community. These regular ongoing conversations allow us to express our concerns before these problems become too big or too large to handle. And then finally, my favorite thing, community engagement increases the trust in the community organization and its governance. By working together to improve communication and understanding, we learn that our communities, our governments, our citizens and leaders, and the organizations that we represent can work together to reduce future conflicts and create better success. So, I want to go real quick through what is called the SWOT. So a SWOT analysis is a simple but powerful tool, and we use it in our planning process to help guide the work we do. In a very simple matrix, as you see in front of you, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths are internal assets, things that are to your benefit, and they're helpful. Weaknesses are things in your community that you own or operate or that you recognize that are harmful or negative. Opportunities and threats come from a different category. Those are external. Those are things beyond your control. So an opportunity is something that takes place outside of your control but could be used to your benefit, while a threat is something, again, outside of your control that can be used, that may harm you and that you need to do some mitigation against. How we use these strengths to our advantage and how we can use them to mitigate our threats from the outside, or our threats and forces from the outside can be a useful tool. So what I'm going to go through with you really quickly is the results of our most recent SWOT analysis with the steering committee. And this is an update to the 2016 SWOT analysis. So what we did was distilled it into the top items that were listed among the community. And what I've highlighted on the screen for you are some things that have changed since 2016. The strengths of Columbus are pretty consistent. We know this is a talented community full of robust workforce and employment opportunities. There's a great community pride and commitment to the quality of place. You're compassionate people who have a safe community and work well together. So the only thing different in the strengths category that came up in this evaluation was you've become champions of walking and biking, which is wonderful. And Emily is a great testament to that as she continues working on your bicycle plan. As far as weaknesses, weaknesses did not change that much in the past 5 years. Still it seems that Columbus is quite auto-dependent. There's a low economic diversity, and that is something that comes from having one very successful major employer. There is a limited bicycle network, and the infrastructure continues to age. As the city continues to grow outward, that can be that can create some of its own problems. And then there's some high train traffic, which was identified 5 years ago. So I highlighted the only new element that we recognized in the weaknesses was some unresolved priority conflicts between motorized and non-motorized transportation. And honestly, the weakness comes directly from your strength, that as you continue to grow in certain areas, you're going to see more conflicts in others. We do see a couple new opportunities for you. So after doing this exercise, some of the things from 5 years ago still remain true: diversifying the economy, securing state, federal, and private funding, promoting denser urban living, and increasing civic participation. Even though you have a high civic participation, you could even go further on that. But a couple of things we saw as opportunities that can be that are new to you are expanding the bicycle and pedestrian network, increasing efforts for diversity inclusion, and promoting innovation in transportation solutions. So those are all things that we can use to your advantage in alignment with your strengths and also to help mitigate your threats. As far as threats go, there are some things that are new, obvious to everyone here today. The lasting effects of COVID were not something that we were thinking about 5 years ago. So we are looking at how COVID is impacting transportation now and also how it may be impacting things into the future. We've noticed some increasing health disparities among those in our communities, and then a growing income gap between the wealthy and those with less assets available. So these are just some things we wanted to highlight for you. Again, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, they're an effective tool that help us build those goals and objectives that Sharif is going to talk you through next.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. So let's talk over the goals and objectives sets in the 2016 LRTP. So in 2016 LRTP, there were 6 goals established through the community engagement process and also through input from the CAMPO staff and steering committee. So these include supporting economic vitality, encourage multimodal transportation, accessibility and quality of life, safety and efficiency, existing system preservation and maintenance, and fostering coordination throughout the MPA. So in the next 6 slides, we have identified the relevant objectives associated with each of the goals. So for the sake of time, I'm not going through all these objectives, but highlighting a few associated with each of the goals. For example, for Katie, could you please go to the previous slide? Yes, thank you. For the economic vitality, we know the importance of freight movements in the Columbus area. So one of the goals was to assess the efficiency and safety of freight movement and identify and implement any needed improvements for that. And when you have lots of freight movements, there could be impact on other modes too. So another objective was to reduce the impact of freight on other modes of travel. Next slide, please. And for accessibility and quality of life, we talked about having improving the system reliability and reducing congestions, and also improving transportation network connectivity throughout the CAMPO area. Next slide. And encouraging multimodal transportation connectivity. So objectives included promoting transportation projects that support multimodal access, and also increasing sidewalk and pedestrian coverage, especially in the residential areas. Next slide. For safety and efficiency, objectives included for example, reducing the number of both total and also fatal severity injury crashes in Columbus area, improving safety for all travel modes, especially pedestrian and bikes, because like they are the most vulnerable road users, and also improving emergency preparedness and emergency response throughout the metropolitan planning area. So the next slide, please. And the last goal was existing system preservation and maintenance, and the objectives included maintaining a satisfactory pavement conditions, maintaining satisfactory sidewalk conditions, like those. Next slide. Oh, okay, so I'm actually 1 slide behind, but anyway, so, and then what we did is we looked at the 2016 goals and objectives, and also we saw that the performance measures and strategies established through 2016 LRTP. And we started analyzing data since 2016 to 2020 and tried to see, okay, so how the Columbus area is doing in terms of all these goals and objectives set for the transportation improvements. So this is a summary slide we have put together to inform you, highlighting a few of those performance measures. So I want to go through the first one, which is the population growth. You know that overall in the Midwest, a lot of states or community, they are losing population. Like, you know, there is a constant migration going on from Midwest to the South or to the West or East, like that. But we are happy to tell you that Columbus is different. Since 2010 census to all the way up to 2018, the county had a population increase of approximately 5,000. So if we put that in yearly growth, that's about 0.8% population growth rate per year. And as the population grew, and you know that the population growth is tied with the employment growth as well. So we can see that there is 1.6% annual employment growth for the Columbus area. So when you have more people and more jobs, then obviously you may think, okay, so there will be more traffic on the road, there will be probably more congestion, things like that. But we are happy to tell you that based on our data analysis, we don't see that. We actually see that there is a slight reduction of mean travel time to work for City of Columbus, if we compare that with 2010. So the reduction is about a minute, and also there is about half a minute reduction if we compare with 2010 mean travel time for the Bartholomew County as well. And then regarding the transit ridership, we found that the transit ridership is showing a declining trend since 2016. And there is about a 12% ridership decline from 2016 to 2019 based on our research and also checking with other transit agencies throughout US. We can tell you that it's a nationwide trend. It's not something tied with just Columbus. So there are several factors playing into it, that why the transit ridership is declining. And Columbus is unfortunately no different in that too. And for the safety conditions, our rating is mixed, that we found that the total crashes are showing an increasing trend. It should go down as per the LRTP goals and objectives. And we also found that, fortunately, that the number of fatal crashes are the lowest in 2019 when we compared the last 5 years of crash data. So that's our finding for the performance measures of the LRTP. Next slide, please. So you know that the LRTP, as Laura mentioned, that it has to be in terms with the federal laws and also the state guidelines and that. So we checked that part, and based on that, we are proposing that the two objectives under goal number 5 needs to be rewarded to be in compliance with the federal guideline. So the previous objective 5.1 just talked about structurally deficient bridges. So we rewarded that to add critical infrastructure, and also we talked about mitigating stormwater impacts. And also we have proposed objective 5.5 in a slightly different way, and we wanted to inform you on that. Next slide, please. So we did the same for goal number 6, that there was another federal requirement to add something about enhancing travel and tourism for the planning area. So we introduced a new objective to be in line with this, which is about fostering regional cooperation for promoting transportation projects and to increase access for tourist destinations. Next slide. So we found that it would be very important to inform you about what were the scenarios established in 2016, and we would like to know from you whether those scenarios are still relevant in 2020 update. So we will give you a brief description of what scenarios for the future were evaluated and what were the analysis result we have come up with. So the future scenarios evaluated in 2016, first of all, the baseline. So it was based on the existing development trend. So when we allow to grow the community in a way that historically it has grown, so that's the baseline scenario. So you can see in this particular map, we have shown the zones where if we keep the current trend going, where the future population increase will be throughout the Columbus planning area. So that's the baseline. And the next one we evaluated is no southwest growth. So there is a map associated with that. So here you can see that in the southeast part of the region, there is no growth in this particular scenario. So all the growths are associated on the southwest or northeast part of the planning area. So the next scenario is no northeast residential growth. So the relevant map of that is this one. So you can see that the northeast, there is no residential growth in the northeast part. Once again, all the residential growth will be on the south side. And scenario number 4 was no east side residential growth. All the growths will be concentrated on the west side of the White River. So that was another scenario which was discussed and also analyzed. And the last one was high infill growth. So how the transportation impacts will be if we go with a high infill growth. So you can see that in the core part of the Columbus area, there are residential growths. The map is actually a bit small, but you can see that there are residential growth near the downtown Columbus and also at other locations where the density is much higher considering with other scenarios. So after analyzing all those scenarios with the help of the travel demand model, this table was established. So what this table actually shows, it shows a comparison with the 2040 baseline scenario. So if you see something about VMT, VMT means vehicle miles traveled. So the changes in VMT, if it is positive, that means that more vehicles are traveling longer distance. So that's why the vehicle miles traveled are increasing. And if you see change in delay, there are some positive change. That means that more time is being wasted because of the delays. So you can see that one particular scenario, the high infill growth scenario, it shows a considerable reduction in VMT, and also it showed a considerable reduction in travel delay. So that performed the best out of these 5 overall scenarios considered with the help of the travel demand model. So if you please go to the next slide. So through this meeting, we would like to know from the participants that whether you want to come up with a new scenario to evaluate for 2045, or if you want to still go with one of the scenarios, and we would like to know that which scenario is the most relevant for the Columbus area. So we have a poll here, and
yes, and bringing it right back online, we had a minor glitch.
Okay, and we apologize for this. This is one of the downside of remote meetings.
So close your eyes, we're gonna zip through a couple slides and get you right back on where we were.
Sharif, while you're doing that, when you say which do we prefer, do you mean which do we want to see? Or
like, you know, I would say, like, you know, which one you think that most relevant for the Columbus area's overall, say like, you know, improvement. So to some extent you can say, yeah, which you prefer, true. So like, you know, that will be the same answer, yes.
So in order to use this tool effectively, you can either go to the website pollev.com/CatherineShack218 and you can answer the question there. You can also text The number 22333 with the word Catherine Shack 218, and then you can respond to the question and the answers will appear live on your screen. So the question in front of you is, which scenarios do you prefer for the Columbus area's future growth? A, business as usual. B, no southeast growth. C, no northeast residential growth. D, no east side residential growth. E, high infill growth. Or F, none of the above. And we'll give you guys a moment to get logged in and set up with this system. We will be using this Poll Everywhere tool for a couple more questions later on in the programming. So make sure if you're logged in, don't leave. We'll be using it again.
So Sharif and Katie, it's Jeff. If I could maybe just interject one item here. And this question looks at sort of the different ways in which the city can grow. I know that in that 2016 plan, we also looked at some scenarios that involved, pretty aggressive implementation of our plans for bike ped transit. And we also looked at expansion of our bus service. And I believe there's another scenario that discussed maybe an increased number of roundabouts and street right sizing in the community.
Yeah.
So, and I hope for our participants that if they have interest in those things, that we can include that as part of our discussion here in a little bit.
Yeah, so Jeff, that's a good point. So these scenarios which we talked about with business as usual, no southeast growth or no northeast growth, these are actually on the demand side. Like, it's going to, so where we want to see the future development. So those future developments are going to get future travel demand. And this road diet scenario, or having more roundabouts or enhanced transit system, that's the supply side of the equation, that how can we improve the network to satisfy the demand, and also how to be more sustainable on that. So yeah, you are correct. So those scenarios are also there. So the one we are focusing on through this poll, it's actually to cover the demand side of the region, where you want to see your future residential subdivisions, or where you want to see your community grow in the future. So as we highlighted that the community is growing, which is good. And then if we keep on with the current trend of 0.8% annual growth in 2045, for Bartholomew County, the population forecast is about 101,000. And but that's a bit optimistic with all the COVID issues and also the economic impact tied with that. We checked on the several sites, for example, the Indiana statewide model, which is projecting about 90,000 people for Bartholomew County in 2045. And also the Indiana University Center for Economic Research, they are projecting about 89,000 people. So the projections are all there, but all the projections are showing more population in the future. So the community, it will be their chance to see, say, how they want their community to grow, at which location. Like, are those at the still at the periphery, or more infill growth, or any specific location in the southeast or northwest? So that was the idea.
All right,
All
fantastic.
right. Well, it seemed like we
thanks
had
for the added comments there, Sharif.
So we've wrapped up that polling feature. It looks like we had pretty unanimous results. So I want to move on to the next slide, which is some more discussion.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you so much for responding to the poll. So Kitty, if you please go to the next slide. Yes. So these are the future priority transportation projects from the 2016 LRTP. So you can see that under the priority column, all these are A. I wish this was my Sanskrit sheet, but unfortunately not. But this, what it shows is actually these are all high priority projects selected through the last LRTP project update. So And if you look at the timeline is actually pretty short because these are priority projects. Within the next 10 years or so, all of those are, say, like, in line for implementation. And I'm pretty sure that most of you know that LRTP needs to be fiscally constrained. So if we put anything in priority projects, we also have to show that there would be enough revenue stream in the future to implement this project. So we also have a dollar value associated with each of the projects. And for all the priority projects, you can see that the approximate cost of implementation is about $24.5 million. So we would like you to take a look at these projects, their location and description. You will see that there are projects including streets or intersection improvements. There are projects associated with road diet or bicycle lanes or improving sidewalks or adding sidewalks. So all of these projects are actually covering all modes of transportation. So this is the priority project list, priority A. We also have another table, which is in the next slide, which is priority B. So priority B is, as you can see, that the timeline is a bit longer. So it's more like within the next 20 years or so. And these are the project lists. And the overall cost of this is about $28.2 million. So if we add priority A and priority B projects, the approximate implementation cost comes about $53 million. And in the 2016 LRTP update, the fiscal analysis showed that if the revenue stream keeps like what has been happening for the last 10 years from the federal and state and also the local municipal sides. So within the next 25 years or so, there will be approximately $55 million in revenue available to implement this project. So that $55 million will be sufficient enough to implement this priority A and priority B projects. So to the participants, our request would be to take a look at these projects because one of the poll questions would be asking for your input about what you feel about the most important transportation issue in Columbus area. So if the most important transportation issue which is in your mind is already in that list, then that's great. If you don't see it here, please let us know. So, like, that is one of the biggest intentions of ours to come to you and talk about this. So we want to keep that slide for a little bit.
Okay.
Just to make them aware of, say, like, what are these projects?
I mean, we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty with our poll everywhere slide.
Yeah,
however,
we apologize. The poll everywhere is based on a different server. So, like, transition takes a little bit of time. Our apologies for that.
Yeah, it's been temperamental in the last 24 hours. But let me get that back up and operating for you. So any questions about the projects you see here on the screen? One thing I will add, we will be making this presentation available in a PDF format for the city's website so that you can review it at your own time. And feel free to send comments and questions. We'll have contact information at the end of this presentation so that you can follow up with any concerns or questions you may have. Also, this recording will be posted on the website so that you can see the presentation live as it happened and share it with your friends for those who have questions that they would like to follow up with.
And just to clarify, these are the future priority projects from the previous LRTP. And so it's not so important that we look at each project individually, but it's more that we look at the types of projects that were on that priority list and confirm that those are still the same types of projects that we want to have in our new plan going forward, whether it be multimodal plans, whether it be just street maintenance, street improvements, whether it be road diets where we're reducing the number of lanes in an effort to curb traffic speeds and make the corridors more multimodal. It's that type of feedback that's really what's important.
Right. Katie, I think we can go to the polls.
All right. So as you can see, our next poll is, what mode of transportation would you be interested in talking about in more detail? And the answers are A, bicycling and walking, B, driving, C, transit, D, freight, or E, other. And so using your poll everywhere, your text message or your browser, you can respond to this question. Questions will remain live for another minute or so to give everybody an opportunity. And feel free at this point to unmute your mics if you'd like to have a discussion. We'd love to hear more from you about your questions and concerns about the future transportation of Columbus. I see some interesting responses here with other, and I'm curious, to those who responded with other, what other transportation are you curious to learn more about?
So this is Karen Niverson. Do you want us to unmute and have the discussion now, or should we put it in chat?
Yes, you're welcome to have a discussion and share. This is meant to be conversational. So please, if you responded other, I'm just curious to learn more.
So I responded other because I only was allowed one. And there are a couple topics that I think are important. I mean, I think bicycling and walking is very important, but as a destination marketing organization, we are charged with bringing visitors and their dollars into our local economy. So I'm interested in talking about, signage, ease of access into areas that are heavy in our visitor traffic and that sort of thing. So so I hit other because I guess I have a couple of different areas that I think are interesting to talk about.
That's a wonderful, wonderful comment, Karen, and appreciate you bringing that up. I do think that really aligns well with the FAST Act, which did include tourism and travel as one of the new federal goals, and increasing access to tourism destinations is definitely something we are incorporating into this study. So finding ways that we can work together to improve the access to your tourism destinations. There are quite a few in Columbus, especially some very historic buildings and landscape elements, and you're famous for all of the beautiful areas around Columbus. So yes, I would definitely agree. Getting people to and from those destinations and making wayfinding easier is a great tool. Anybody else who submitted in other want to share, or anybody who submitted in any of the categories want to share their reasoning why?
Hi, this is Jason. I'll put it in the chat also for the record. But I put other similar as far as more than one interest. But then the other is and I'm not sure how forward-looking we need to be with this study, but autonomous vehicle needs in the future, alternative fuel, for an example, charging stations for electrified vehicles, etc. Ride sharing, as we understand the future of ride sharing, that's more drop off lanes versus parking spots, things like that. So that was just some other ideas.
Great, thanks for sharing. Appreciate that comment. And yes, autonomous vehicles and smart technology are definitely shaping the way that we look at the future. There's still so much in flux right now that we have not got a project presented at the moment that includes those technologies, but we do keep an eye to the future and how we can best accommodate them and make sure that this system is flexible to achieve those goals. So if everybody has submitted, are there any other comments before we move to the next question? And I appreciate you all writing in the chat. We are taking notes today, so thank you for this, and we'll have it for the record. All right. So just a moment, I'm going to switch us over so we can start our next question. Any questions for our staff or for the CAMPO staff here before we move on to the next thing?
Hey, Katie, it's Jeff. I'll offer a question or a point of discussion. And when we talked about the scenarios, and Sharif walked us through those demand side scenarios, and we mentioned briefly the kind of supply side scenarios or mitigating scenarios that were reviewed in 2016. Have you ever, I guess at this point, or do you see an opportunity to potentially incorporate ride sharing or the autonomous vehicles, for example, that Jason mentioned, as a scenario that's worth studying as we advance this plan and understand how it affects our network?
It's a great question. I'll pass that to Sharif.
Yeah, this scenario or like, Jason's comment on the fuel stations and also the connected autonomous vehicle, that's a very relevant one. And we felt like, in 2016, although it was like 5 years ago, so it was not a part of the scenario analysis, but for 2020, this is something we should definitely look at and as part of one of the supply side of the scenario analysis. So there could be some discussions and also planning part on where we should have some future charging stations, preferably next to the freeways, identifying those locations. And also we have worked with the communities where we looked at the vehicle registrations and see how the vehicle ownership for electric vehicles are changing over the time. So things like that. So yeah, of course, I think we should have a scenario to evaluate on that. Yes.
All right, fantastic.
So we will be jumping forward just a second. Going to briefly, Sharif, can you talk about the next steps in the survey that will be taking place? I'm going to do a little bit of behind the scenes work really quick.
Sure, definitely. So there is a survey for the CAMPO area residents, the Columbus area residents already online, and I believe Laura has done an outstanding job of informing all the concerned people as much as possible to share the survey. As part of the presentation, we are also going to share the survey site, and we would highly appreciate if you please fill up that survey, and it will be beneficial for us to get your input, and we can assure you that all the response we receive, we are going to summarize them, and we are going to incorporate as part of the update process. We are going to, and also the survey is available both in English and Spanish for the Spanish-speaking residents of Columbus.
All right, so our polls are back up and operating. Just want to make sure you can still text message your responses here. Thanks for jumping ahead with that. We have about 10 minutes left for our presentation, so we're opening it up to your questions to the general audience. But we also want you to submit your responses to these polls if you are available or if you can. So in this case, the question is, what are your biggest transportation safety concerns in the Columbus area? You can fill out any comments you want, and they will appear on the screen.
And like, you can be location specific. Like if you feel like, okay, this particular intersection or this particular roadway segment has some safety issues, please identify them. Please let us know. As you saw, that safety is one of the major goals of this long range transportation plan. And we need to work aggressively to reduce the number of fatalities and also severe crashes in the Columbus area. It will depend on your valuable input as the road users in the Columbus area. If you feel like a particular intersection needs to be addressed for safety, please let us know, and we are going to document everything.
So yes, our current question is, what are your biggest transportation safety concerns? For those of you on the call today, feel free to submit. We're also going to make these available that you can send your responses after the meeting. So for those who are watching the recording, you can also submit your responses to us. Feel free to do that. And while we're receiving those responses, I just wanted to ask a couple of quick questions. So maybe Jeff or Laura, you can help us with this one. How do the goals, objectives, and priority projects in this process get implemented?
Thanks, Katie. I think I'll let Laura take that one if she's able.
All right, and while Laura's doing that, we're going to switch over to our next question, which is, what is the most needed transportation improvement in the Columbus area?
And also by transportation improvement, we mention all transportation modes. So it doesn't have to be just related with cars.
Sharif, to that point, I noticed that Jason Hester left us a comment in the chat that asked if public transit questions or comments were relevant. And I think the answer to that is yes, correct?
Yes, definitely, definitely.
And I believe transit to the west side area, I'm not sure if that's the Woodside Industrial Park or not, Jeff, but I know that was something that was discussed 5 years ago. And I believe one of the scenarios looked at providing fixed route transit service to that part of town. And it looks like a van pool solution was tried and perhaps was not successful. I don't know, Jeff, do you have any, or maybe Jason, anybody elaborate on that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, I think either of us could, and I know a number of us on the call had some role in that effort, and we did give a lot of consideration after that 2016 plan effort around how best to connect employees to jobs down there at Woodside and Walesboro. Fixed route was certainly considered, but we really did. I think feel positively about van pool as an option, primarily because of its flexibility, and actually worked for quite some time to identify funding mechanisms, which we were successful at, and then attempt to see if there was interest in that van pool effort. And in the end, after a couple years of trying to promote and explore that, that effort's, say at best, on pause at this point. We really found that we weren't seeing the interest in that option that we hoped. So I think in a lot of regards, maybe we need to revisit our discussion about how best to make that connection for employees.
All right, well, thank you all for participating today. I just want to call attention, we have 3 minutes to the top of the hour. As Sharif mentioned, we do have a survey available live right now. We have over 70 people who've currently taken this survey. We're hoping to get as many as 200. We would love your participation and your ability to help spread the word. So here on your screen is the link, and you can find these links as well on the city's website. As far as our next steps, Sharif mentioned those, and if you have questions, you can reach out to Laura Thayer, who's on the call with us today, or Sharif, who led our discussion. Checking the chat box really quick before we go as far as comments and questions. Any questions for our staff or team before we take off today?
Well, Katie, can we go over time if people still want to hang around?
Certainly.
Yeah, we can. And
Emily asked a question about bike train conflicts. So it'd be great if the responder who mentioned that could elaborate on those conflicts.
any particular location, I believe, if you can specify, that will be helpful.
I might just mention that there are several projects in the rural areas of Bartholomew County for improved railroad crossings that will make them safer. That doesn't necessarily eliminate the conflict, though. You have to wait a long time for a train. But maybe whoever put that comment on, is that what you're talking about? Just having to wait forever?
I think as a safety concern, some of the respondents, they mentioned that the safety issue for bike and train conflicts. So to help to identify those specific locations, what we have done, and also we are preparing the map, we are mapping all the bicycle crashes in Columbus area. And that will help us to identify the safety locations, where you have specific concerns. If you see at a higher frequency that reported bike crashes are occurring. So this will help us, and also the Columbus planning staff to identify the locations for safety improvements, and also there are dedicated funds from the state and also federal government to work on the safety projects. So that is something we are going to do as part of it. And there was, yes.
Sorry, I would also add, as a cyclist, riding on a bicycle over railroad tracks can be very scary and sometimes dangerous. So making it easier for cyclists to cross railroad tracks is something that many people are concerned about, as well as there's opportunities out there now with the railroad increasing the number of trips they're taking and abandoning fewer rail lines. They have a new program called Rails with Trails. So it's rails that run parallel to railroad tracks, and making sure people are safe, and when they're in close contact to the trains is also a high priority.
And in the comment box, I can see a concern from Mr. David concerned that the efforts to reduce Washington Street into downtown to 2 lanes, that we are further discouraging folks to visit and participate in downtown activities. So Jeff, do you want to talk about it a bit?
Sure, and I think David brings up a good point, and something that I think is a really important element of that discussion. That, I think that there's been a lot of interest in trying to figure out how to better add bike ped connectivity along Washington Street. So certainly sidewalks and potentially bicycle lanes resulting from a road diet there that would reduce the number of vehicle travel lanes. And, I think David presents, the other side of that discussion, which is, the vital role that Washington Street still plays in terms of delivering vehicle traffic into the downtown. So, I think that's all part of what is a fairly complicated discussion going forward about, what kind of improvements are appropriate on Washington Street, and how do we meet all of those goals.
Yeah, and based on our experience in successfully converting 4-lane roadways into 3-lane roadways with center turning lanes, or like in implementing road diet, we have seen near downtowns in downtown Urbana, Illinois, we have successfully converted a 4-lane roadway, which is called the Main Street, into a 3-lane cross section, and we added on-street parking next to the downtown businesses. So after 5 or 6 years of being after this got implemented, I think the overall response from the downtown businesses are positive. That they see that more they are getting more customers because parking is much easier now, and also there are more bicyclists in the downtown area. So just a feedback.
This is David, and I would ask the question, I'm really not concerned about the downtown because I think that will take care of itself. It's the issue of getting to the downtown from, say, 31 to 25th Street and 25th Street down to, say, 11th Street. That's the area that I think if it becomes too congested, that people just will not make that extra effort to come on into the downtown.
Thank you, David. Jeff, do you want to add something to it?
You know, I don't know if there's a lot to add to that. I agree about the area that David's talking about, and that's, again, it's that same area where, you know, there's a lack of sidewalks and just not convenient bicycle connections, and you know, again, this, you know, the solution for that, I think, is going to need to be very thoughtful, and certainly take into account David's point about, you know, how that, you know, interacts with our goals for downtown and making it convenient for everyone to get there and enjoy that space. So yeah, I think it's a good point that David brought up, and I'm glad he did so.
I'd like to open the floor. And is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you wish would be included in the presentation, or that you're curious to learn more about? And you can feel free to speak up or type it in the chat box.
I am curious, Katie and Chief, if I may, I know Jason, I think, maybe was going to contribute something to our Woodside Walesboro conversation, and maybe we moved on. So I didn't know if Jason had a thought there.
No worries. I was just going to say it was very innovative. The van pool approach I thought was exceptionally innovative. It was outside the box. Clearly, there were well reasoned justification for not offering a fixed route option there. There's certain limitations, especially with a 1-shift bus route versus 3-shift employers. That said, you know, the customers spoke, basically, right? So employers didn't get behind it, riders didn't get behind it, and we knew there were challenges with that. So, and literally just last week, I had an employer in that area once again say, now, why don't we have a bus route down here yet? So it's, you know, we're just back to square one on that. So it just continues to be a transportation issue. Not one that we've ignored in the past, but it is an ongoing issue. So yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for sharing. We also have a comment from the chat box. Has anyone considered adding a People's Trail connection from North Mill Race straight over the river to the west side of the People's Trail?
Emily, do you want
Katie,
to respond to that? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, Katie, this is Emily. Yeah, I can respond to that question. So it sounds like the question is, can a people trail or a shared use path connect maybe from the area of 11th Street, connecting west and then down over to the people trail, maybe on the west side of I-65? That specific route has not been discussed, but we are currently in the process of updating the City of Columbus Bike Ped Plan. Late last year, we did collect public input through an open house, which seems odd now that we can't meet in person anymore, but through an open house and a survey. And we did learn a lot of insights about needed connections in the community. But we are still actively collecting input from the public, and we always will, about needed improvement. So that's something that we can take a look at. And if that, I think Zach was the individual who wrote that question. If you'd like to email me separately about that and really what you have in mind, it's definitely something that we can consider the feasibility of, including on the map. So,
Emily, that actually adds a great point. The People's Trail, they're great, but how do we help neighbors get connected in their own neighborhood?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, one of the primary focuses of this bicycle pedestrian plan update is making connections and filling gaps within the existing network. We have a particular focus on how we can make safe connections for residents that live in neighborhoods that are currently isolated from other areas of the city and from the bike ped network because of high speed and high volume traffic routes. So State Road 46 and US 31. We're exploring how we can make safe connections across those busy streets. Another primary focus of this plan update is to establish a connected, low-stress bicycle network for users of all ages and abilities. So those that are really comfortable riding in the street and being on a bicycle, and then also for those that are less comfortable, families and children. So a connected circular route for those groups as well. So again, we are in the midst of updating the bike ped plan. So I would welcome any comments that any of you have. This is a great time to do that, either here or in an email to me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
This is Karen. I was typing in the chat, but if I get the opportunity to just say it, it's easier.
Please.
So, since the 2016 plan, we have new development opportunities along 2nd and 3rd Street in our downtown. Mixed use residential, hopefully someday a conference hotel, although that's probably been slowed down a bit right now. But the idea being that, we have the highway that runs through downtown. We have high speed one-way traffic on 2nd and 3rd Street. Are we looking at that right now in our new transportation plan?
That's definitely something that can be incorporated if we know that development is coming or planned in a certain area. Is there documentation that you could share with us about this study or this planned improvement?
Yeah, we do. As a community, we have some of that.
Awesome. Yeah, well, anything that is documented will definitely be included and considered for analysis.
Sure. I mean, I'm not sure, I know those are, state highway, that's a state highway. So I don't know what considerations we can even make with it. But I just, one thing that we talk about in the downtown is a walkable downtown is so very important to that infill, as well as, again, from the visitor center perspective, to increase visitor spending so that they can walk around. And we find that highway to be quite a barrier, right? When you get to that point, you just stop because it's, high speed, high traffic area. Is there anything we can do to mitigate that so that as our downtown moves, toward that 2nd and 1st Street area, that we can get pedestrian traffic moving back and forth?
That's a very good point.
For Katie and Sharif, you'll find some content on that development that Karen referenced in the Envision Columbus downtown plan update.
Okay.
So, and we can help you identify that if you need to. And I'll just share with Karen that obviously, you're right on in that those are state-controlled highways, and I think probably the best way to describe this is that the state's goals for moving vehicles aren't always necessarily compatible with our goals for moving people around downtown. So there's an abundance of discussion needed there. But I do believe that Dave Hayward, our city engineer, for those who don't know Dave, and some others are having some increased conversations with NDOT about that 2nd and 3rd Street corridor, certainly as the residential development along 2nd Street and then hopefully the conference hotel shortly thereafter become realities. We think that's going to be even more reason to engage with NDOT and perhaps explore some new thinking about those streets. So that's good to bring up, Karen. Thank you.
Yeah, we are familiar with this document, which Jeff mentioned. We already have reviewed it. We will take a closer look about the particular development you mentioned. And Jeff also highlighted an important point about coordinating with the state agency regarding setting up priorities for particular corridors. We have seen in one of the communities where we worked with the University of Illinois in Champaign, one of the designated US route goes through core of the campus, so which is called the Wright Street. That's also US 45. So the university, the city, and also IDOT had a successful conversation in redesignating that route in a way that the trucks will not feel that they have to be in that US route all the time. So there could be some room for engagement, talking with the DOT and also other players involved. Yes. So I believe it was a pretty engaging conversation. Thank you so much, all of you, for participating. And we also have another opportunity this evening in case if anyone has missed this community workshop. So it'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So if anybody has missed, we would appreciate if they join. And Jeff, do you want to do any closing remarks for the participants?
Thank you, Sharif. I wouldn't add anything other than thank you so much for again taking the time with us today. I know we had a couple opportunities for follow-up, and I know Laura's email is on the screen. Certainly, any comments on any of the topics we covered today, go ahead and send those to Laura. Certainly Emily and I as well. Most of you have our email addresses, but we'd love any follow-up comments that anyone wants to share. And beyond that, just thanks again for the time.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So with this, we are concluding, and we hope to see you during this LRTP update process sometime in early next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.